So welcome everybody to this network dialogue on guidance and standard for security by design. Please ensure that your microphone is muted during the webinar, unless you want to say something in the question and answer time. And also you can turn off your camera, so you're not popping up on the recording later on. You can use the chat box at any time for any questions, and we will use Slido for a little bit of interaction. I'll just put this in so I can, yeah, okay. So if you want to already check this out, you can go with your with a new tab in your browser, or with your phone, or with another device, or with the same on sli.do or sli.do.com, both works, and we will send you the code. The code will come in one of the other slides. So it's a bit of a fun way of having getting to know you and asking some questions and so on. Yeah, and as you just saw, the event will be recorded. A little bit about us. So my name is Veronika Schröpfer. I'm the head of EU research projects at the Architects Council of Europe. The Architects Council of Europe is a European umbrella organization representing the interests of all European architects towards the EU institutions. So at the moment, it's around about 600,000 architects in Europe, and we represent 30 countries, actually, so a bit beyond Europe. We do a lot of policy work, so where we really look at what are the regulations that come out and how do they influence the daily life of an architect. We want to be the single voice of the architects towards the EU institutions. We work also on educational and professional standards, professional mobility, of course, so architects can graduate in one country and work in another, or they can live in one country and have a project in another. So mobility is a big topic for us, and we very much fight for architectural quality, like the quality of the built environment and the sustainability of the built environment, so including also circularity and so green buildings, nearly zero energy buildings plus energy buildings. So we do a lot in this area as well. And here in this project, we work on security by design. So what can architects actually do to protect places of worship? This is very much about the aesthetics as well as the safety and the sustainability of the solutions. Because obviously there is an urban fabric around places of worship, and the building itself, the entrance and so on, is designed by an architect, can be renovated by an architect with a raised security level and so on. So we are in this project to really speak about what can an architect do to protect places of worship, and in this sense also worshippers. So this is the event of today. So we're going to speak about perimeter security. So this thin line between the outside and the inside, the discrepancy between the openness and the safety. Is a very sensitive, or it's the sensitive area. I mean, how would an intruder get in? So we have this a specific event for it. It comes along with a paper that has been developed by Paul, who will speak in a moment, and which you can also find on the SOAR website. I mean, in general, www.soarproject.eu is the website for the resources that you are probably interested in. So here in this series of webinars, so as I said before, this is the third one, and we're going to have two more. We really look at the standards and the best practice, what is out there, what needs to be changed, what can we look at. And yes, just listing a few there. We don't need to go through the text. I think it's a bit too much text. And this is the agenda of the day. So that was me with a welcome message. Then we're going to have Kaashif Awan from Enhancing Faith Institutions. This is the coordinator of the project. We have three partners. We have Enhancing Faith Institutions, or short IFI, as we call them. Then we have the Architects Council of Europe, us, ACE. And then we have the Finchurch 8 as well. So Kaashif will present the SOAR project to those who have not don't know it yet, and to those who already know it. I hope it's still going to be interesting, because he's speaking a little bit about what happened in the last few months, and the trainings, the timelines, the events, and the new resources that are available for you. And we are still running trainings specifically also for youth and women by our partner Finchurch 8. So if you're interested to run a training in your community, just write in the chat and we can contact you later. After Kaashif, Paul Smith, also from Enhancing Faith Institutions, will present the discussion note on perimeter security. And then we're going to have a presentation by Hans Scheving, an architect, and he's speaking about reaching the sanctuary, like a few words on the perimeter protection from a practitioner. And then we're going to have a short interactive session with the audience, so with you, using sli.do, as I said before. And then we have Veronika Fáberová speaking about perimeter protection versus human and climatic factors in public spaces. So Veronika just already introduced herself. And then we close up with some final remarks. And so you're ready for your lunch break then, hopefully. I think we're going to quickly test sli.do. So just to see if you all connected and everybody knows how to use sli.do. I now see that we already have 20 participants, so I think everybody is there. So you go on sli.do, or you can also put sli.do as one word.com, so then we would not put dot here. And the code is #SBD. It says here the QR code on the next slide. Yeah, so that's also possible. So you can scan the QR code here, and then you can put in the #SBD, that's security by design, and just type in where you're based. So this is a easy welcome question. Dublin, Paris. Brussels. So we have 20 participants, but only 4 have managed so far. 5. Now, once everybody is logged into sli.do, then we just know that later on you will be easy for you. Heidelberg, really? I was born in Heidelberg. Sorry for the personal comment. Munich, Freiburg. Wow, there's a vast variety today. Prague. I guess all the Dublin people is our partner from Enhancing Faith Institutions. Maybe 11 are in. I'm just waiting a little bit more, just so I know that everybody is in sli.do for later on for our. Maybe I should join. I should do it myself. Okay, Brussels, Copenhagen, Paris, more Brussels in a French way, Munich, Lille, Prague. Freiburg, more Freiburg, wow. Liège. Okay, so should I move to the next?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And this one is just to get to know a little bit more, who are we talking to today? So these events are meant to be for architects, EU representatives, faith leaders, everybody from faith institutions, of course, and also law enforcement collaborators. But of course, it's interesting to know what you're all doing. If we have a good, what's the other? Maybe we don't have the possibility to change.
They can write it in the chat if they want.
Oh yeah, you can write it in the chat if you want to say what other is.
Hello, can you hear me? Veronika Fáberová.
Yeah.
Admin security expert, because it's not written there.
So it's not law enforcement collaborator? No.
Could be. Let's say yes. Okay, I will change that.
But maybe our term is too complicated. That's okay.
Okay.
It's a very long expression. Okay, so it's the same 14 than before. So that means that the other 5 are not on Slido yet, and one is me. Okay, so we have a lot of architects here, which is really good, because obviously as the Architects Council of Europe, we're happy if we have a lot of architects here. We have some others. We have some faith institution managers, EU representatives, and law enforcement collaborators. So I think this is a very nice mix of people. So I thank you very much and for this, and just stay on Slido, stay in this poll for later on. So you're already logged in, and then it's easier when we have the other round of questions. And then with this, I would thank you and hand over to Kaashif if he's already there.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, thank you, Veronika. So hello everyone. Obviously, thanks for joining the online event today. Obviously, Veronika has kindly provided an update into what the title of this session is, and it's a series of our SBD events that we are doing as part of the SOAR project. So my presentation today is just to quickly run through what is SOAR, the objectives, and some of the key highlight work areas that we've conducted over the past year and a half of the project. I know most of you are very much aware of the SOAR project and have engaged with it in some capacity in regards to training or attending one of our events as well. So I won't go into too much detail about the objectives, but just hopefully give you an update on where we are and how we are doing things. Yeah, so as most of you kind of said in the Slido, these are the 7 countries that we're working in, and we have a footprint and engagement in all 7 of these countries in terms of training, and the team are actively engaging in all of these countries, whether it's faith institutions, community leaders, architects, law enforcement, policy level. We have a role to play in all of these countries, and we continue to work in those as the months continue on until the end of this cycle of the project. Just to quickly touch on the strategic ambitions of the SOAR project, as most of you are aware, one of the key aspects is obviously empowering communities to be and feel safe in places of worship. So this is mainly through kind of innovative communication materials and training, different forms of training, as I'll go into a bit more detail in the slides to come, to build resilience and the understanding that obviously congregations and community members should be able to feel safe in their places of worship, practicing their faith, and whether that is empowering the institutional leadership, the faith leaders with training and materials to then communicate to the congregations to ensure that they can worship safely in their local places of worship and institutions. Bringing communities together is a key aspect of this project. This is an interfaith project. This is a project for all faith denominations, and we are actively working and have been working with faith groups across the 7 countries from different faith backgrounds as well. And this is also shown in our communication materials and best practice guidance that we have been sharing as well. And to help decision makers make the correct choices to improve safety, obviously this comes to our engagement, open channels with the EU, who are obviously funding this project, policymakers, local and regional officials who attend the training. We have an open dialogue and channel with policymakers and decision makers to help provide information on what the SOAR project is doing, what we're finding, and what potentially can be improved. So this is just one slide I wanted to show, just to quickly highlight visually about the community-centric approach that we have been working towards and within the SOAR project. So we have, as I said, this SOAR project is an interfaith project. It's working with all faith denominations and also all type of places of worship to try and support and enhance the security and safety and training of. So that's large venues, medium venues, and smaller venues. We have been working so far on the project with all 3 different types of institutions, which again provides a variety and kind of diversity in terms of the training and needs of the communities across these 7 countries that we and the team have been delivering. We have trainers on the ground, community development officers, architects, and the support teams that have been working with the institutions, with the communities to get them to the trainings and support them, whether it's interfaith leaders at a regional, local level, encouraging the interfaith engagement, as mentioned, across denominational and operational roles of people, so volunteers, and obviously setting up kind of security leads and those institutions that do have current security leads at the institutions, helping train them and improve their skills, and obviously smaller communities, connecting them with mainstream communities as well. So in many of the cities that we've been working with, you'll see there's a lot of smaller institutions and venues amongst kind of larger ones. So what we've been trying to do in our training is obviously bring these together to improve that community communication as well. And obviously sharing materials and bringing institutions together in localities that we have been working, which in the long run will help in tackling safety and security, and also just improve interfaith relations and communication. These are just some of the trainings that we have been delivering over the past year or so. So we have been obviously providing regional events in key cities. So this is a protective security training, which we have been delivering to faith leaders, institutional managers, volunteers, bringing together law enforcement, architects, to provide a day's training on security by design, but also protective security, how to respond to threats, how to improve security. And this has been an aspect of the training in which we've delivered to nearly 1,000 people so far in the SOAR project. We've also been delivering women and youth training, which is obviously delivered by our partner Finchurch Aid, in terms of equipping women and youth with the security training and understanding and awareness of how to be safe, and also play a role in enhancing the security of their local institutions. Security by design, so obviously an event such as today on perimeter security, we've delivered a series so far in which Veronika mentioned, we've produced kind of scoping papers on around different aspects of security by design, having this dialogue between faith leaders, architects, law enforcement, obviously, and community members around understanding the concept of SPD and how to implement it in their institutions. Policy roundtables are something that we, again, have been engaging with. around opening those communications, sharing what we've learned, best practice with community members, policymakers, and architects as well. And then amongst this, obviously, there's a series of national engagement that we've been delivering in the 7 countries, bringing different institutions together who have been engaged on the SOAR project. So just a quick update on some of the different various trainings and engagements that we've been delivering so far. Just focusing a little bit on SBD here, security by design. This is obviously just gives a bit of a visual in terms of the different aspects, obviously engineers, technology, security advisors, architects, and urban planners. And this is obviously something that obviously the architects that we've been working with through the Architects Council of Europe as part of the SOAR project have been really amazing at explaining and delivering to the faith institutions and communities at our trainings, is around the concept of SBD, how it can be implemented, the support network around it, obviously the aspect of, it's not just the aspect of the security by design in terms of building, such for instance perimeter security, okay, some bollards, there's the aspects around risk assessments, there's the aspect around urban planners, manufacturers, there's the whole process that has been carefully communicated to faith communities through the work of the architects or the project. And these type of events that we're delivering today kind of fit in with this in wider objectives of creating awareness and understanding of SBD. These are just some of the few scoping papers that we've delivered as part of our Security by Design series engagement so far. So we've done events and dialogue events and engagements on visual deterrence, existing buildings, including the heritage sites, SBD gates, doors, and windows, and then outer area SBD, specifically looking at bollards. So obviously, as most of you are aware, obviously security by design is a very technical aspect, and you're talking about doors, bollards, perimeter security, windows, even the materials of the glass, CCTV surveillance. There are a lot of aspects that we've touched on, and obviously today's on perimeter security, so we'll be also producing a scoping paper on this, and these are all available on the SOAR Project's resource section of the website, which you can easily download, and by the end of the project we hope to have a lot more of these scoping papers based on the events that we have coming up towards the end of the project, in which we can also put together and make one big paper from it, sharing information, technical information and understanding and guidance on the different areas of security that we have looked at as part of the SOAR project. So this is, again, just touching on what I just mentioned in terms of the resources and knowledge hub. So throughout this project, we've developed a lot of communication and materials, sharing best practice with faith communities from different faiths in the 7 pilot countries. So we produced a series of incident management guides, which provides details on how institutions can react and respond specifically to religious events. So whether that's Eid, whether that's Christmas, there's different, obviously institutions have different events throughout the year in which they celebrate in different ways. And each of them need to be made aware of some of the security challenges that could arise and how they can place some security deterrents and systems in place to ensure that the congregation and worshippers that attend these events are safe from any harm. So this is a series that we've produced, and we've also produced some videos related to it as well. You can also see, obviously, the scoping documents from Security by Design, and then also some 10 security tips that we've produced for the different faiths as well. So these are just a few of the resources that we've produced on the SOAR Knowledge Hub. And as I said, if you go to the resources page of the SOAR project, you'll be able to explore some of the other documents as well that have been translated into the different European languages also. So just come back to Security by Design. These are some familiar faces. These are the jury members of the SOAR project, specifically related to the competition, calls for best practice that we have delivered as part of the SOAR project around putting out a call to architects who have worked in developing and designing up building places of worship that have security by design built into that institution. And this event took place, where this photo was, I think 2 weeks ago now, in Brussels, in which we gathered the jury members together to go through the submissions from architects from across Europe, going through the projects, discussing which one was the best, which one had the best SPD implementation, the best explanation, and in practice how it looks like. So this will be published, I think, in the next month or two, in a report with all the submissions that have come in from the architects and the projects, showcasing their work on security by design in places of worship across Europe. And we have an event, I think the end of event project in January or February next year, will have a exhibition where they will be presenting their work as well. So these are some of the architects on the SOAR project. I know a few were missing due to travel issues, but these are the architects that have done a brilliant job, a part of the SOAR project so far. And I think most of them are on this call today as well. A key aspect, just wanted to touch on that, something that we've delivered as part of the SOAR project as well, is risk assessments for places of worship. All places of worship, different denominations across the 7 countries. And obviously risk assessments is a key part of SBD, to be made aware of some of the security challenges that your institutions are facing. Is, again, very important, as the architects would say, to do a risk assessment first to assess some of these issues, and then see if any SPD aspects can be built in towards being a solution to a potential issue. So we've delivered close to nearly 40 to 45 risk assessments so far across the 7 pilot countries. So these have been mosques, churches, gurdwaras, temples, synagogues, across the 7 countries we've been delivering. And obviously this will be something that will have an immense impact in improving the security and safety of these institutions that we are working to help. These are some of the training, just some quick snapshot images of some of the trainings that we have delivered across the pilot country. So some of these trainings you'll see have been regional, local protected security events. Some of them have been national engagements, gathering places of worship, faith leaders and regional officials, architects together to share some of the work and best practice, and setting out some plans in terms of dialogue and engagement moving forward for the SOAR project and beyond. So these are just some of the images that we have produced from these events, and you'll be able to explore some of these in more detail on the news section of the SOAR project website. Again, some of the just some more trainings. You'll see some women and youth training engagement here, some visits to the local church where we've done some trainings, regional officials, I think in the top right, that is in, I think, Hull, following the attack. I think it was on the mosque. Some of the regional officials attended the event to support. You'll see a law enforcement officer, I think, on the bottom, in Germany, providing a session to faith leaders, architects, and the communities that we've been engaged with. So again, so far we've engaged nearly 1,000 people in our trainings across the 7 pilot countries that we're working with, and we have quite a busy September, October, November, and December for the rest of the year, in which these trainings will continue. Just to touch on quickly on some of the innovative communications and campaigns that we've been working on. So as part of our work in providing materials as part of the SOAR Project Knowledge Hub, we have been producing videos as well, best practice videos based on some of the infographics that we have specifically designed internally for this project. So you'll see, as I mentioned, 20 security tips for synagogues, churches, mosques, and we're also producing one for temples in preparation for religious events, which goes into quite detailed 20 tips around what institutions can do to keep themselves and their institutions safe and secure. There's also SPD videos that we've done to provide a quick snapshot on different elements of security by design and how your institution can implement this aspect of security by design. I think so far there's been over 7 to 8 million impressions on these videos and online campaigns across social media, with over 1 million views on these videos as well. so far, and we have plans to obviously produce some more aspects of these campaigns and communication materials for faith communities for the remainder of the project. This is just something I wanted to share, obviously, which is part of our campaign. So the SOAR Project, you can follow the SOAR Project on social media through 3 different hashtags. For those that are aware of, a hashtag is it's a communication kind of channel through a hashtag. So one of the hashtags we have is EU SOAR. The other hashtag which we use as part of our training is something called Security EU. And the other hashtag is For Safe Worship. Now, For Safe Worship is a hashtag that is used by the UNAOC in terms of their work on protecting at-risk communities and places of worship, which we've also worked with and towards. So an aspect of that is the UNOC really recently and produced 5 communication books on tackling vulnerable targets from attacks, providing best practice, sharing information. And the SOAR Project was mentioned in the 4th book, if you can see, Protecting Religious Sites from Terrorist Attacks. The SOAR Project's work was included in this by the UN, which obviously is showing the work and the partnerships that the SOAR Project has been building as part of our work in protecting that risk community sites. So yeah, this is just some aspects that I wanted to share as part of our work on external engagement. We've been presenting at European-wide events, the G20 Summit last year in Munster, Germany, the Interfaith Forum last year as well. So these are just some of the external events that we've been presenting at. Yeah, and this is something more recently. Over the last 2 weeks, our team in Germany have been asked to speak at the World Council of Churches Assembly in Germany, which is, again, the biggest church conference gathering of church leaders, Christian leaders, places of worship from Christian backgrounds across Europe and the world. And the SOAR Project have been engaging at this event, sharing the work of SOAR, and being able to speak and present on our work, especially in the 7 countries that we've been working in Europe. These are just some of the different relationships with faith groups that we've developed. Again, all faiths, different council of religious institutions as well in Germany, in France, building relationship with umbrella bodies that allows us to reach more at-risk communities in the 7 countries that we are working in. These are some of the SOAR Project newsletters. So each month we produce a newsletter highlighting the work that we have been delivering as part of the SOAR Project. These are available on the resource section of the SOAR website. So far, we have 14 issues that have been developed and published. And as I said, we're delivering event. I think we've got an event or an engagement nearly every week now until the end of the year. So if you are interested in joining any of these events or attending any of these events, you can do so on the events section of the SOAR Project website, and then you'll be able to see any upcoming events and register accordingly. So that's just my quick presentation. Hopefully I didn't take too long, just on the aspects of the SOAR Project, what we've achieved so far, and just some images to try and highlight the progress that we're making. And just to touch on, just a comment in the, as a reminder for me, just a comment in the chat box that was made. Obviously with our engagement with the EU, obviously all this work on SPD, there is a security by design document with standards that will be published this year, I think. So our communication with the EU, at the moment, we're sharing the EU quick guide as part of our resource section, and at each one of our training, this is printed out in the specific language of the country where we're delivering. And this EU guide has been received very well by the community members that we've been delivering it to. And once the EU, as mentioned, have published this security by design standards document, we'll be sharing it with all our contacts as well. So I think I've taken a bit too much time there, but hopefully that overview just gives a better understanding of where we are on the SOAR Project and what is to come. But thank you all.
Thank you for this introduction of the SOAR Project. And I will now hand the floor to Paul Smith, who is also working for the for EFI, the Enhancing Faith Institutions, the coordinator of the SOAR project. Paul is going to present the SOAR discussion note on perimeter security that this event is about. So Paul, are you happy with sharing your slides, or?
I will try. First of all, Veronika, let's have a look.
Perfect. I switch myself off again.
Excellent. Thanks very much, everybody. My name is Paul Smith, as Veronika said. And just to explain, the presentation I'm about to give really is not only a reflection of my background. My background is in policing and security. A deal of my time was previously spent with architects on major developments and the refurbishment of important buildings and important sites. The presentation is also a reflection of the issues that people have raised in our travels across the 7 countries, as explained by Kaashif. So I hope it's a mixture between the technical issues involving the security of perimeters, and also the practical issues of dealing with organizations that in the main are charitable organizations, need to tread that line between achieving a sense of security and at the same time the simple issues of economics and the budgets, the money they have available to them. So the discussion, I hope today, will be based around the understanding the function of perimeters, and architects will be way ahead in terms of that understanding. Some of the methods of improvement, which are changing all the time, and the options to improve security using the principles of security by design, a sense of security within everything that you do, the way that you design, the products that you use, from the outset, whether that's a new build or whether that's a refurbishment project. And within all of this, I hope to underline the importance of risk assessments. We have a form of a risk assessment developed within the SOAR project that's available to see on the website and our documentation. But understanding risk is principally the most important thing. So as most of you will know, but it's worth repeating, that the principles of securing a building or a site, it is an ancient art. And originally there was 5 important aspects that people wanted to consider when they were securing a building, and that is to discourage people, the bad guys if you like, to detect movement or incursions into the site or the building, to defend the site, and if need be, retreat to a safe location. And lastly, but I hope now that this principle has been replaced by our security service in the if need to attack the offenders or the individuals that are trying to get access to your building. But all of that traditionally was based on a very strong understanding of risk. And obviously the ancient civilizations were absolutely expert at this. So when we talk about security or perimeter security to ordinary people in the street, they might immediately think of that image on the right there of the barbed wire fencing, the concrete blocks and the access control into a site, very much like an army installation. But technically, perimeter security is recognizing that there is a boundary or an area of control that needs to be applied within any sort of site or building. So we can secure that by a physical means. We can do that by showing an area of ownership or control. We can reduce the impact of trespass through those means. And also the perimeter is there to discourage the misuse of an area through influencing behavior. And this is a really important area of security by design, and any security principle is discouraging misuse of an area or trespass into an area by working on the psyche of an individual is as important as a really high fence or a big lock. And lastly, an area again which is not well understood, is to direct and control visitors and staff in the right way. To be able to understand where your visitors and staff should be at any one time allows you to understand if an individual is detected, and many of them will say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know where I was going, I am lost, can you help me? When actually they may well be the burglar or the individual that's going to present a danger to your staff. So direction and control for visitors and staff is very, very important. But they are the basic principles of perimeter security. And the whole project is based around our understanding that security measures should be harmoniously integrated into the environment. So in other words, they shouldn't appear to be at odds with the environment, and in fact, if possible, should improve the aesthetics and the look of a place. They should be practical, they should be achievable within the budget or the means of the building operators, and lastly, they should be proportionate. And the first step to understanding risk is asking some very simple questions of the operators or the owners of a site. And I always ask them to think about, what are we protecting and why are we protecting that? Where do you consider the security perimeter is? Is it on the fence line of your property, or actually is it the building wall? And we'll hear a little bit about that in a few seconds. That's a very important consideration, because many people turn to trying to secure a site which is too big, therefore it's too expensive, therefore why are we bothering? These are all important questions. And most importantly, how will our perimeter security measures work with other procedures that we have in place? So not only working practices, but also the things that we've got in place at the moment. So the level of lighting that we're working with. Have we already got CCTV? Do we have staff or volunteers working on site? It's all very important, because your security needs to work in line with your everyday operations. When we go through some of these risks, some of these crime risks, you'll understand that they will have an impact on how your perimeter is identified and what level of security it requires. So going through these very, very quickly, from the top left, when we discuss vandalism or damage or criminal damage to the building, obviously they will require access to cause that damage, so good perimeters can prevent damage to the building and have an impact on the wider areas outside of the building. When we consider arson, going to the right, really an arson attack requires close access to a target. So if that's a feasible risk, we need to move the perimeter away from the building or our target that can be subject to that attack. Obviously, burglary to the right requires very close access to the target, in the sense that the offender needs to gain access to the building. So it may well be that if security isn't achievable at a wider perimeter, at a fence line, for instance, what we have to do is to harden the target around the building. So you can see already how our understanding of perimeter security starts to move according to the risks. And along the bottom line, which obviously are the much rarer offences, attacks with a weapon or a vehicle create more complications, in the sense that whatever perimeter security anybody activates, it needs to be incredibly strong to repel the type of vehicle that might be used in such an attack. Attacks with a firearm are very, very difficult to prevent once you have a committed offender. However, reconnaissance or preparation of an attack can be discouraged with good perimeter security. But of course, we all have to understand that once an offender is within the building or is within the perimeter, detection such as lighting and CCTV is not a discouragement to an active shooter or an individual that is absolutely intent on utilizing that firearms. And lastly, arguably the rarest but most dangerous attack is with an IED or improvised explosive device. Because most improvised devices require very close contact with the, if the need is to create human casualties, very close contact with people or the interior of the building. So just something to think about in terms of the risks. So let's talk about the practical application of perimeters and how that's understood and how that's developed in large-scale sites. So what you can see from the image there is to totally secure that site with large fencing. Not only may it be inappropriate that area, it's hugely expensive. So what you've seen here is that the architects working on this proposed building is they've pushed the access control away from the building by using some very, very careful and clever devices. This building has a high risk of attack from vehicles. So what they have done, not only by the landscaping and making sure that the building is raised from the ground, you have sloping areas, you have in the bottom right-hand side, those very clever concrete seating tiers, which prevents vehicles raising themselves onto the grassed area towards the plate glass windows. You will see that around the play and recreation areas, good, strong, high fence mounted on a concrete base. And all around the site, you will see strategically placed bollards to prevent vehicle incursion towards the actual building. The use of the light coloured paving reflects the light, and they have used open areas within the reception to ensure that people fully understand, if you want to come into this building, you have to go through these doors. Any attempt to get into the building in any other way, we will regard you as a trespasser. So you can see from the large reception area that the staff within the reception area have some good control over the main entrance, and incidentally, in this case, have control over the CCTV system fitted to the building. So again, application of security by design principles, simply by changing and adapting the design and preventing the need for large scale, one could argue, ugly fencing. However, many places of worship are very old, and many of them have no recognizable boundaries. In other words, they were built originally straight on the roadside or on the side of the pavement. So they don't really have a controlled perimeter, such as a fence or an area before the building that we would understand. This control measures have to be implemented at the line of the building. So in this case, good lighting and CCTV could discourage and detect low-level offences, but because of the nature of the street scene, they are extremely vulnerable to vehicle-borne or improvised explosive device attack. However, what we would hope is that the owners and operators of the building really concentrate their security around good procedures, and also rely on the surveillance, the surveillance provided by the residential areas around the building. Now, this is an interesting point in the sense that heritage sites that have no defendable perimeters usually have a door that leads straight from a square or a pavement or a footway straight into the main building. And for some sites, that's creating an unacceptable risk. So what we have seen during the project are a number of innovative and very effective ways of creating that safe space for staff to be able to assess who is coming into the building and, if need be, control that second door from a reception desk. And the example on the top there, the image on the top, is a good image whereby we can see that out of shot, there is a large reception desk and the staff there are controlling that huge plate glass door with an electronic lock. So during service times, they can not only staff that door, but also and really make a really good assessment of individuals that may be coming in late, but that don't form part of the normal congregation. And again, I'm grateful for an architect colleague for pointing this building out. It's a fairly recently built building. And this is in a very rural area, as you can see. And there is absolutely no chance of economically securing this building because it's surrounded by fields and farmland. So what you can see here, it's been designed whereby the actual walls of the building, and as you can see, they are substantial, that is the boundary that's being protected. And as you can see, the main entrance towards the bottom left of the image is open to receive visitors. But again, bollards have been placed there to prevent an attack from a vehicle. So that in itself, whereby it has no fencing whatsoever, is very effective at protecting the congregation and the staff. Where we have problems is when we have a site that incorporates parking for vehicles, whereby there may well be a risk of a vehicle attack. So electronic gates are very effective and controllable. And the image on the left is there to prevent some pretty heavy vehicles ramming the building. But generally, these sorts of devices are quite slow. They can't really control pedestrian access or an individual wanting to get into the area on foot. And also a high risk of tailgating exists and reduces their effectiveness. So obviously, if it's just around monitoring vehicles that come onto the site, the simple barrier that you can see to the right is sufficient to do that, especially when used with a key pass or a card or a code. But there are special considerations to be made if you wish to secure the site from any form of vehicle attack. So going to a more practical example, the image that you can see here is actually a mosque that's been converted from a site that was a factory building, manufacturing goods. And so they had a problem whereby not only do they have a large number of worshippers attending this site, but through the entrance there, as you can see, between the buildings that's linked by the glass walkway, what you have at the rear is a huge car park that also needs protecting. So this area is a high crime area as well. And originally, the boundary had very overgrown trees and bushes, which prevented staff within the offices that controlled the building, which are the offices are on the ground floor there in those four windows that you can see on the ground floor. They couldn't see outside. So until the vehicle was actually in their yard, they couldn't detect who was coming in and who was coming out. And so with government assistance, they managed to implement a system whereby the scruffy and overgrown boundary was replaced with railings. So they have a very good view, not only through their forecourt there, but also onto the street. And also they installed bollards to prevent any vehicles moving towards the entrance, because at busy worship times, that grey coloured entrance in front of the main door is filled with worshippers. But obviously, that also enables them to not only utilise the steps to the main door, but also utilise the ramp that you can see there for disabled visitors. So at the moment, the whole area is controlled by staff within the offices. New lighting has been installed. CCTV and the large gates there are controlled electronically. And as you can see, small speed ramps have been installed to slow vehicles down before it gets to the narrow passageway where people have left their vehicles to enter the mosque. So a very practical solution in a high crime area to a building that has been attacked in the past. So much of the EU advice in detail at the moment is based around their understanding of protection of urban security and urban settings. And that's absolutely fine, because they have provided for us some pretty expert advice around the use of bollards and architectural features to protect open sites. And these principles can also be applied to the perimeter security of buildings as well. And as I think Kaashif mentioned, we are expecting more advice from the European Commission on building protection as well. So where a more decorative finish is required, we've seen certainly over the last 10 years, the use of cordon perforated steel, not only to give a very contemporary look to sites, but because the steel fencing is perforated, you can see from the image at the bottom there that light is able to penetrate that. So that can be used in not only decorative applications, but also in reasonably separate public areas from private areas. So where places of worship haven't got a traditional fence line that can be protected, what we have to consider is the protection of doors. And unfortunately, the application of doors and door security systems is a whole seminar in itself. In the sense that there is such a wide variety of applications that might be suitable for places of worship. But obviously this is where procedures within a place of worship come to play, because one of the most common incidents that I used to witness was that sensitive buildings, not only places of worship, would have excellent security at the front of the building. You could walk round the back, and the most common thing is a fire door would be propped open whilst worship was going ahead. So it'd be quite possible to walk straight into the building if you decided not to use the front. Obviously, in high-risk areas, the use of electronic gateways is at the top left there, and keypad access can be an option, and is ideal for retrofitting if planning permissions allow in heritage sites also. And for places of worship, windows are a real problem in the sense that older buildings are frequently at risk because of the way that they were originally designed, but also the modern secondary glazing and perforated shutters also gives us some options around securing windows when there is no outer perimeter to protect. So a little bit finally on surveillance, because that's very important to work in concert with any physical security that's applied. And we separate our understanding of surveillance into two categories: formal surveillance, which is provided by your traditional guards and staff and volunteers, also CCTV, but also informal surveillance, which can be just as effective. And informal surveillance for us is around the systems that you have in place, the relationships that you have with neighbours, the training you give to staff and volunteers to alert people when you feel something just isn't right in the building. And it's a way of giving early warning to worshippers if things are happening, so that the authorities can be contacted to provide some protection. Unfortunately, when we talk about CCTV, for instance, and this was an area of specialism that I led on many years ago, we also think about large, sophisticated control rooms with 24-hour staff. And actually, with technological advancements, what we may be talking about is the simple ring entry door button with the integrated video camera here that you can see in the center of the picture, which is quite sufficient for people's needs. If you look at the image on the right, obviously CCTV now has become so sophisticated whereby staff and volunteers, even if a place of worship is closed, can view the building, can view the perimeter through a mobile phone system. But it's important that we understand what CCTV is actually designed to do. And what you can see from the right, there are 5 standard categories that we have to, whether or monitor and control a large site. So we don't really need to recognize anybody. We just need to recognize that people or crowds are developing, and we just need to identify that particular risk. Do we need to detect people? So do we need to link our CCTV with ancillary alarms? Is it just a case of observing people flow? Where are they going to and from? Or more sophisticated systems will have the ability not only to recognize individuals, but also identify to a standard which is submissible in a court of law. And these considerations are very, very important and will be arrived at through the completion of what we call technically an operational design statement to enable the operator to identify their needs. So the context of all of this is very few standards are published that relate to the security of places of worship. But as you've already heard, there are now new publications available through the SOAR websites. We can glean some advice through the current European Commission products that are available online that mainly deal with the urban environment. And lastly, other governance is provided through local authority planning law, building regulations, and we can't forget the importance of consulting architects, engineers, and specialist installers who hopefully will translate the needs of a client into solutions that will mitigate the risk. So in conclusion, my understanding has always been, it's always been very reliable, that everybody has a role in defining good security improvements. Not only the client describes the use and risks to be assessed, the architect are skilled in translating that client requirement into a design and technical specification, and then the installer or the contractor should fully understand that brief and demonstrate the experience and capability to deliver the scheme, whether that's a new build or whether that's improvements to existing buildings. And Veronika, that's me finished. And hopefully everybody got that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. So this was brilliant, and everybody who likes to read a bit more on these topics, Paul was presenting a discussion note he has written, as I said earlier, so you can find it on the SOAR website under resources. Maybe I can also add that if you have any questions, you can always use the chat function for questions. And because we are a bit over time now, so we are actually 23 minutes late, I'm directly handing over to Hans. Hans Scheving is a Danish architect and security expert, and he's going to speak about how to reach the sanctuary, like a few words from his experience. Hans, will Gloria share your slides? I think Paul need to stop sharing.
Paul has to stop.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
There we go. Fine. So yeah, and the slides are here. In short, I'm a practitioner in Copenhagen and expert advisor on the SOAR project, together with Torben Møbjerg, a colleague of mine, landscape architect here from Copenhagen as well. I think he's in the audit forum right now, listening into what we're saying here today. I'll try to be a bit brief. First of all, we've gotten a bit over time, and secondly, because Paul already said some of the, also stressed some of the points that I wanted to contribute with as well. So we'll run through the first screens at a certain speed, and I'll end by showing some cases here from Copenhagen. I think I may know. Yes, please. This screen just reiterates that there are a number of operators involved in projects like this, as both Kaashif and Paul also stressed. It tends to become a rather complex operation. That doesn't mean that it's equivalent to rocket science or anything, but it means that you really need to keep your cool, and you need to keep a 360-degree observation and interest in all actors and all operators involved in a project like security of places of worship. Otherwise, you will almost certainly drop some of the important issues on the ground, so to say. Next, please. Good. Yeah. So the risk assessment is really essential. Without a proper risk assessment, which is in some cases performed in conjunction with the architect, but often it is an issue that relies a large way by efforts from the police or local intelligence or private agencies which are specialists in assessing the risk. And in that thing, I have to stress, seen from a practitioner's point of view, that 100% solution to protect against any kind of attack or crime or hate crime or vandalism is not possible. There will always remain a certain element of risk of an attack. And that leads to the somewhat sad but necessary conclusion that any risk assessment and any acceptance of that from the client must include what's the level of accepted damage if an attack occurs. You cannot protect a site 100% from being attacked. So in that, with that view, what is really needed from the client and from the architect and from the other parties involved here is a steady hand and contributing with their specialized knowledge to achieve that goal. When we speak about the perimeter, I think some of the most important issues to bring up early on in making the brief is, what are we aiming at? Should observation of an imminent attack become easier? In most cases, I would say yes. It's rather basic that we need to be able to observe, because as I'll get to later on, it makes us it gives us time, which is all important in securing objects. Should we make entry more difficult? In general, all around the perimeter, that may not always be the case. We saw the church in open farmland, and in that case, it would be a somewhat bad signal to send if we just fenced it all in. But then, would we accept some entry points that we stress must be chosen by the audience and by the public, so that we can easier sort out who are the bad guys on their way. Next, please. So if we cannot prevent 100% attacks, then we must rely on some ground rules to make it work as best as possible. We need time to warn and to respond to a threat or an ongoing attack. And in that capacity, distance, physical distance, equals time. We create a better time window for handling with the situation if we can create some distance from the first observation of an attack until it actually happens. If we can put in some obstacles for unhindered entry, that again gives us time to respond. And with better time to respond, increased safety. In security architecture, we always talk about the 3Ds. We have to put into a brief. First of all, to deter an attack. Paul aimed at the same thing in his presentation. We must detect an attack underway, and we must delay it as best possible to bring in the safety measures in terms of safeguarding people, getting them into a safe room, calling the police or the fire brigade, whatever is needed to counter an attack. Next, please. So, to make it work from the client side, you need to line up all possible types of events at your place of worship. None is too small, and of course, none is too big to be included. But it must include lists of the daily prayer practices to major religious events. And often you will also have a number of other more vernacular events, such as flea markets or summer concerts and stuff like that. And if the project and if the architects are supposed to succeed in their aim, it's important to know the full calendar of the site in question and of the community. Of course, this, like a lot of other things here, has to be shared in confidentiality to a certain point. Goes with most security planning and architecture that it's absolutely imperative that you can rely on your advisors, on your architects and your contractors, not just to spread all the good news all over the town and so as to compromise your place of worship. But that's another story. And that goes certainly for securing the perimeter as well. Next, please. Look at the existing surroundings. Look at any natural features that can help you in actually providing security around the place of worship, the core target, so to say. Look at the urban landscape. What are the roads like? What are the street lighting like to make it more visible, to keep it in the clear who's actually addressing or attacking the building or the site, and what distance can you create from an outer perimeter to the target. Paul also showed some of the difficulties. I'll get back to it in one of the following cases here in my presentation. And what can you actually bring in from your own religious heritage on site to include in the security measures? It may sound a bit abstract, but in real life, it's always an enormous help to the project team to determine and to establish a better security on site. Next, please. There are a number of obligations and limitations and restrictions, and you need to be aware of those from day one, so to say. What are the hindrances or the possibilities made possible through legislation? What are the local building codes? It doesn't help, for example, to block all fire exits. That would be highly illegal in, I believe, every country in Europe. And it's therefore not a proper way of safeguarding a complex that you just block the fire exits. Just an example. You need to bring into focus what are the internal and external security resources. It could be that the local police station is like 2 numbers down the block, or it could be that you actually have difficulty in requiring and obtaining help from the outside due to simple physical limitations or restrictions in the local planning codes. You need to look at critical deadlines, time frame, and you need to look at the expenditure. It doesn't really help making a brief together with the architect for a very, very elaborated and frank project if you 2 weeks later on find out that you have only half the money or a tenth to complete it. It's better than to bring all limitations to economic situation out into the open from day one. In the picture, you can see an interim measure against enemy vehicle attacks that can be hired on a daily basis from a number of companies throughout Europe, and you can bring such a thing into use on a particular event where you have your community, your audience out in the open, but you don't have the money to build permanent fixtures, bollards, and stuff like that. Then a more practical hired solution can actually be the way to make it all succeed. Next, please. This is to stay with the economic side of things. This is a generic scheme we developed for a foundation here in Denmark together with a private intelligence and security office called CERTA. And it's in the case you have a non-used former industrial estate somewhere, a small industrial building, and you need to turn it into a crisis center for molested women. And there you are often given an edifice, a property, directly onto the street, which has very hard times in becoming sufficiently secured. And in this case, we have tried, and you can look at the pictures here afterwards. I suppose it will be part of recording that is made accessible to all, that you need then to put a perimeter, so to say, in the shell itself, in the building shell, and then make a new perimeter at the back where you can have a playground or meeting places for the molested women and their children in the outside, tucked away in relative security. Next, please. So the way to tackle these complex tasks is really that all security issues must be included in the construction process from day one. This goes with new build as well as transformation or rebuilding, interior reconstruction or whatever. Bring these issues into the brief from day one. Otherwise, you're almost certain to drop it more or less on the floor. And therefore, you also need all hands on deck, meaning all the relevant actors and operators in such a project. You need to have them in, so you don't disregard or forget these vital issues. Next, please. And this then is not the way to do it. It has been done in a lot of cities all around the world for a number of reasons. Wasn't time to bring in more permanent fixtures. This is from New York. Concrete blocks to hinder an enemy vehicle attack. And no matter that it's stenciled with the New York Police Department, it's really not a hindrance. It's not a nice way of living in the urban fabric to be reminded in such a way of the fragility of life, so to say. And in real life, I could take the SUV in the picture behind and press it slightly at the concrete blocks, and I could make way for a following full-size truck or whatever. So it doesn't really work. It's more or less simple, and in my view, it's also a sad symbol, a memento mori, if you want, and that is not consistent with security thinking or with the religious societies that you represent, I gather. Next, please. So, if we don't do things the proper way, the project will never become able to appear as an integral part of the site of worship. It will end up not meeting security demands. It will not be aesthetically pleasing. It will most probably be very impractical, and it will almost certainly end up costing more than necessary. Next, please. This is a somewhat sad example from Stockholm in April 2017. There was a hostile vehicle attack in the pedestrian area, and on his way, the attacker just shoved aside this concrete figure that actually meant to protect vehicles from entering the side road to the pedestrian road here in front. And no matter if it was the official Swedish lion of the realm, the shield that was the figure, it didn't prevent the attacker in any which way. Next, please. So what we saw here after the attack in the pedestrian street was that a high number of casualties, mostly injured, but also 5 or 6 dead people had been left in the street, and the flower pots and planters or the waste paper baskets were no hindrance whatsoever. Could have been hindered if some correct elements, so to put it, put in place beforehand of the attack. Next, please. In this situation, try to rely on some of your local history. Bring in some references from, say, old types of bullets here from Great Britain used in lots of circumstances, modern bullets that can actually take a heavy lorry or vehicle attack can be made to fit into a historical context with another foundation, another core to the bullet. We shall see one example of this later on here. Next, please. The underground may often present challenges when we work in the urban fabric. In some places you have technical infrastructure or sewers, ducts, whatever, and grave difficulties in placing these objects in the right position and getting them anchored solidly enough to actually cope with the stress from an attacking vehicle. Next, please. There should be, yeah, right. This is a project made by my colleague Torben Møbjerg, the other Danish expert on the SOAR group, and it shows the Parliament Castle in Copenhagen with the large square in front of it. This is a place for massive congregations and demos and all sorts of public events, and it was completely unsecured until a couple of years ago. And now instead there has been erected this whole semicircle of bollards in the shape of balls to protect the public here in front of the castle, and to protect the castle proper from access with explosives or just massive vehicles. In this small picture, you can see some of the lines of sight that had to be respected, both for aesthetic reasons and urban planning, but also for security reasons, and to actually cope with the transverse axis of the whole area here. This is the government area of Copenhagen. Next, please. So the result made by Torben and his team were 82, I believe, balls in granite placed on a solidly anchored bollard. So these balls are actually hollow, and they have a foundation that goes deep into the ground. They can take a very large lorry without giving way, and they will protect people on the inside and the building proper. They were, of course, rather costly, but in this case, it was the decision of the client, that is the Danish government, to spend the money and not thereby just securing the place, but actually improving it in terms of architecture and architectural history, as the balls refer to symbols of the royal realm of Denmark. And what you can see here from the palace side towards the outer perimeter is that even these stairs were relayed, as were the whole square. It was an enormous project because it's the sixth palace in this place since medieval times. So every time you dig like 30 centimeters into the ground, you have to call the archaeologists. You run into archaeological remains everywhere and technical infrastructure. So it wasn't just about erecting these balls, but actually redesigning the whole square here. And the final stairs up to the Parliament building are now made in such a way that if a small vehicle should perchance enter somehow between the balls, they cannot progress here. They will be stopped by the angle of these stairs. Next, please. The last case I brought here today is from the main synagogue in Copenhagen. It was attacked in 2015. A local young guard was killed by fire shots. And the police set up, this is a picture from the weeks just after, or the days just after the attack. And you could see the police had to set up cordons and to get people to stand away from the side of the street where the synagogue is placed. I don't know if you can see it in your picture, but here behind the policemen are the flowers in place to commemorate the killing and to offer your visual assistance to this tragic situation. So the old fence in front of the synagogue was reinforced, and a very speedy analysis of the site and needs were put in place. Next, please. And the risk assessment said that there were really no serious risks from an enemy hostile vehicle attack because of the shallow angle from the facing street and onto the synagogue, which is placed behind this outer fence, part of the listed building, the protected historical building that houses the synagogue. So you can't really attack the synagogue goers or the community or the building with a vehicle. Improvised explosive devices are a possibility, but was not ruled out. But the most likely scenario for an attack would be a drive-by shooting. So next, please. Therefore, when we looked at the risk assessment and ways to try to recreate normal life, so to say, for the community, for the Jewish community, we ended up placing these two large glass sheets in front of one of the major entrances to the proper synagogue. That's the old carriage entrance. And it's a place where you actually exit the synagogue when there's a concert or an event, lecture, whatever, and you go out here to take a breath and to maybe have a cup of coffee or to smoke a cigarette. So you needed to shield this off. This is facing directly onto the street. So you needed these two sheets partly to protect you from bullets from drive-by shooting, but we also needed it in a way so that we didn't interfere directly with the building behind and to the side, because they are listed buildings. You can't just add something onto them. So we ended up with the Tree of Life, not a coincidence, it's a shared motive by Muslims and Jews and Christians, and appears in lots of monotheistic religions. And we did the motive with a local artist, and it serves other purposes as well. Next, please. Here it's seen from the inside. You can see the street in the background. You can faintly see the old now reinforced fence towards the street that makes it sure that you can't just crawl over it without being seen by the CCTV in place. And you can actually hide here without being seen too clearly from the outside. In order to make sure that it lived up to expectations, we had a one-to-one prototype tested, found with a deep foundation. And here you can see a test result fired with a Kalashnikov, and that's the bullet when it hits not just the ballistic glass here, but also the outer steel frames. You cannot penetrate it. This is a military type hard projectile, very effective projectile, but it cannot go through the glass sheets. And in some instances, you can even reverse the process, and instead of just being hidden here behind, it serves as a supplementary entrance. When you have the large festival once a year, you can set up metal scanners and access limitations here and let people in queuing up from the outside here to supplement the speed gates, other places in the outer fence. Next, please. I think this is the final picture, and it shows the night scene. In the ground behind the glass are some very sophisticated LED lighting that actually can be both controlled from the central control room here and by the police, and it can also work in sync with, for example, the music in at a concert in the synagogue here to the right, so that in accordance with the music, like in a disco or whatever, the colors and lighting here will change. And in case of an imminent attack, there's a certain visual signal in the lighting here that both provides an alarm for all those standing here behind it to go seek shelter in a safe room or hit the floor, and also to protect anyone behind the glass sheets from being seen from the outside at all. So it meets a number of requirements, and I hope by these two cases, however different they are, that it becomes at least partly visible for you that there are, in a number of very complex and difficult situations, almost always a way out to secure your place of worship and its perimeter in a better way. Sometimes it takes time, takes a lot of consideration. In every instance, it takes a very high degree of cooperation between the different parties involved. So thank you for this. I think I'll end by now.
Thank you very much, Hans. I specifically like the example of the tree class. It's so beautiful and brilliant.
Thank you.
So we are very much over time. I think everybody realized that. So I hope you are all able to stay a little bit longer because we still have 2 items to do. One would be the interactive session, which is important because this is supposed to be a dialogue event. We like to hear more of you. And then we have an interesting presentation by Veronika Fáberová on parameter protection versus human and climate factors in public spaces. I would try to go quickly through the interactive session and then hand over to Veronika. So I will share my slides. Okay. Can everybody see my slide?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. You can either scan the QR code here at the top corner, or maybe you are still all in Slido from before. It's the same poll, so you could just go on the same page again, or you can go here on sli.do.com and put in hashtag SBD as the code. And the first question would be, do you have an outer perimeter around your place of worship, or is it placed at a busy street? So this is a question for the faith leaders and faith managers that join the call. So I guess not everybody would answer, or maybe if you're not a faith leader, then you answer for the place of worship that you visit, if you do that. So we had 4 people asking, answering. Of which 3 say, okay, my place of worship is placed in the middle of the busy street. Yeah, and I think it's the point that we had before now, that most places of worship are existing in an existing urban fabric and next to a street. bit of a change, 5, 6. I would move on to the next question. What is next to your place of worship? So is there just a pedestrian way? Are there trees, bollards? Do you have a square? I mean, we just saw that many have a busy street. Do you have any architectural items? Do you have lampposts or gates? So which of the items that we spoke about today are next to it? Busy road, public, tourist, busy area, historical, and entrance gates and landscaping, lots of trees that lead onto a road, bollards. Okay, then move to the next question. Do you have CCTV surveillance at your place of worship? Yes, totally, would be everywhere. Yes, partially at the entrance maybe, or only at certain points. Yes, totally, would be everywhere, or no, if you don't have CCTV. 5 people, 6 people answered. I get the feeling that that 6 are the faith leader people from our 15 participants. Okay, thank you. If you answered yes to the CCTV question, do you have anyone monitoring it in real time, or is it just for documentation after an incident occurs? So you have somebody sitting there in front of a screen like Paul showed before, or it's just for documentation? Okay. Okay, someone has someone sitting there. And you have both, somebody monitoring and documentation. Okay, if nobody else is answering, then I will go to the next question. So when you enter the entrance door, does it lead directly into the room of prayer, or is there a hallway or something similar in between? So it's like what we saw in Paul's presentation, where we had these historic places, and they had sort of this glass box area before entering the room of prayer. But of course, it's always better if you have a hallway or something in between. Okay, moving to the next question. I'm sorry, I'm running a bit, but I want to give Veronika a lot of time for her presentation as well. So do you think it would be feasible to use temporary solutions to prevent, for example, a hostile vehicle attack at your larger events? No. Yes. No. Yeah, okay. So it's maybe better to have not temporary but permanent solution. And this is our last question. This is for everybody. So because as I said before, we have still 2 webinars to come. So one will be with the sister projects, so the projects that were also funded under the same call of SOAR. And then we have one more webinar on the best practice architectural examples. But we're also organizing 2 more real events on an EU level network dialogue. So one, yeah, indeed, we were aiming to put on funding opportunities, how we can, how places of worship and communities find ways to fund their security renovations, but they still there's still one more event where we could cover any topics that you need for your okay. Well, I'm seeing on the answer. So I would like to volunteer for your project. That's for Veronika Fáberová, who is going to present in a minute. Capacities, case plan, concrete. Concrete like the material, or concrete examples? Surveillance, vehicle ramming prevention, cross-community dialogue. Yeah, I think, yeah. The interface is really important. So 8 people have answered this one. Of course, there are 15 in the call at the moment. I don't know if anybody else would like to say something. So funding opportunities is for sure covered by our next real event. Well, it's a bit difficult to find funding opportunities on EU level, so it's more on a national or regional level. Or we could do 2 events on funding opportunities in 2 different countries. Okay, it looks like nobody else is answering this question, so we're happy with the 8. And so I stop sharing my slides. And so now I would hand over to our last speaker, Veronika Fáberová, on perimeter protection versus human and climate factors in public spaces. Veronika, can you share your screen, or will Gloria do it?
Okay, just give me a second. Yes,
We can see you.
You see me and hear me. Could I ask Gloria, please, if she can put my presentation on?
Sure. Yeah. Give me a second.
Thank you. Thank a lot. First of all, thank you that I could take part of this small conference or workshop, because the topic is very interesting for me. And as I already mentioned, I would like to volunteer. So I don't know if you see me.
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
we see you. We can hear you. We see the slides.
Okay. So we can go for next. I will not keep you longer, but I didn't know how many people will attend. So I would like to admit my notices from my experience. So a lot of things said already Paul and Hans, and thank you very much for that, because it sounds to me like a speech from heaven, and I feel myself in the right group of people. So as far as perimeter function, just briefly say it from my point of view, is to protect those people who are within. Let those people who are desirable to in as easily, but as under the security control as well. And in need, you have to get a lot of possibilities how to get people quickly out to some other prepared safe spaces. That's my point of view, basic. Next, please. I would like to talk and mostly concentrate on the religious event which are mostly held outside of the buildings, and special event like you already mentioned, for example, special markets or celebration of some special religious event. So as for example, how big event should be and big place for prayer, visits of Pope in different countries, because you know there is a place of worship for 1,000, 2,000, 100 people somewhere on the meadows or another historical places. And of course there are another confessions which they run different religious celebration outside. If you can put next, please. So what I see as the basic difference between approach to perimeter difference between inside event and outdoor event. So first of all, we have to count customs of believers. If you are go rarely on the weekly basis, let's say regularly, that's the word, sorry, to your church or mosque or whatever, so you know what you will expect it as far as time, environment, how to get in, where you can meet with your family members, or when you can meet with your friends, how much time it will consume, and so on and so on. If we have big religious events, I just took pictures from yesterday's funeral of Queen of Elizabeth II. We can discuss if it was religious or not. But you don't know, most of the people, you don't know the time frames. Even if you spend too much effort of information spreading in time to so many people, so still there will be a lot of hassles. If we can put another slide, please. So outdoor event, you need more time to plan. If we talk about yesterday funeral, if it was or wasn't a religious event, there was a lot of time in advance to plan. The plan for funeral was developed something like 20 or 30 years ago. Of course, you have to count with higher costs on on security measures, because I've got a lot of experience with big international events. Always you have to count with VIP and other exceptions from the system, from the security system. So you need to plan the holes, which special demands of VIP and other issue will be in place. You need to quickly, no, if you can go back. Thank you. We need to get quickly fold and unfold and expand the barriers of perimeter, of artificial perimeter, which we temporarily will build for that event. And of course, we have to count in advance and try in advance passage speed, because if you need to put in 20,000 people in and 40,000 people out in the same time, so you have to really good measure the time, how long it will take, and multiplied by how many persons you need to get in. That's the difference, because if you are going for your Friday, Saturday and Sunday regular worship, so you already know the habits, you already know how much time in advance you need, and so on and so on. you need a safe use of safety technology, but there is a greater demand for manpower, always will be. Even if you now can in place temporarily CCTV systems, warning systems, information systems, and so on. Always, if you will plan measures for outdoor religious event, there is a big demand for trained manpower. And of course, higher demand for mutual communication between different teams like police, first aid, volunteers, security, runners, and so on and so on. And it is not easy. And of course, there is a big issue, my favorite, which is the weather factor. We can go for next slide. Because I have quite a lot of experience with instant change of weather. We usually cooperate with nearest airport, because nearest airport has got the best forecast of weather in a minute. So if there will be very hot, you need enough spaces where people would like to sit and share the shadow. If there will be just quickly coming storm, of course there could be panicking, and people will try to find so quickly move to place when they will be safe, especially if they are close to big TV screen or another television or sounds barrels and so on. In case of wind, for example, a refreshment stand could fly away and people will start panicking, and they would like to run as quickly as possible to some shelters, and they have to be informed in advance about the shelters. Next one. So even if we count weather factor, so it's predictable crowd movements on the basis of a lot of experience from, for example, music festivals or political meetings. There are a lot of predictable situation which we couldn't plan in advance the proper measures. Excuse me. There is predictable spare covered spaces, so what we can plan in advance where the people will be, they can hide. We have to count this possibility of panic can be predicted by installation of quality information system, because, for example, there could be strong wind, some shade, or fog. So people, you really need to put a big demand on enough television screen to say if you are nearest to parking a place, please, who's got places, spare places in the car, please just put your light on and invite people. They are not able to hide anywhere, something like that. So there are big demands for scenarios for all possible crisis situation. I don't want to teach you, I know you already know, I just would like to mention this is something extra to perimeter and people protection of outdoor religious event. Sometimes you need to clean outside perimeter because you need to move people from the center of event somewhere out. You should be ready to prepare barriers for attack from outside, or if there is something happen inside, you really need quickly to fold them up. clear communication and a lot of testing plan before you realize your event. And it is necessary to have enough time and space counting in advance how many people, how quick they are able to pass different entrances, how many people we can get there, and so on and so on. Next. So I just wanted quickly remind the difference between the protection of the perimeter of permanent and temporary construction, and would like to say I really would like to cooperate with you and volunteer on this work. And this is, for example, just short explanation what I could bring to the team of your expert, and we can work on it. And there is another thing. I'm leader of working group number 3, which we are responsible for security design of building and environment, including we are part of technical commission of CEN. They call it accepted crime prevention through environment and design. So thank you for your listening to me, and I will be ready if you have any question. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Veronika. The other Veronika.
Veronika, thank you for your help, Gloria and Veronika.
Yeah, it was really good to have you here today. So I think that was it. We said we're going to have some final remarks on this event by Kaashif and myself before we close down. Being aware of the time and that we already run over 10 minutes, I'm not gonna speak long. I would just like to again let you know, please sign up to the newsletter so we can invite you to our 2 next webinars that will come in October and November, and of course to our 2 real events, and one will be on funding. We can close down now. So thank you very much for coming, and we hope to see you soon at the next webinar. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
And thank you from me too. Bye.